And next up is Jeremy Routledge, who I can introduce as being a highly experienced producer, director, produced programmes for BBC Three, BBC Four, ITV West, and many other people, and done a lot of work with education, corporate, as well as the broadcast work. Co-founded a company called Calling the Shots in Bristol, which is a really excellent company, worth having a look on the web, Calling the Shots, who do all kinds of things, all those things I've just described, corporate, broadcast, educational. We've had the pleasure of collaborating with Calling the Shots here in Somerset on projects for things like First Life Movies, and more recently a project funded through ITN, which was all about getting young people's voices heard in the news agenda. And without any further ado, Jeremy Routledge.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm Jeremy from Calling the Shots. And I'm going to try and, you're probably thinking a little bit, we haven't done much talking about producing and directing. So I'm going to try and pull together some of the strands we've heard so far today into thinking about how, if you want to be a producer-director, first of all, what do we mean by it these days, and also how do you get at it? And I'll try and be quite quick, because I know you want to go on to the practical stuff, and I can feel, you know, you've been sitting here quite a long time. But I'm going to give you a few facts and figures as part of this, and very, very few of them, but actually it's just to make you think about it, pick up on all those arguments and conversations about qualifications. So, first of all, I want to get you to do a bit more thinking as well, actually. So, thinking about producing and directing, how do you think people get into producing and directing? What is the most common first job for somebody coming into producing and directing? Running? Yeah? Work experience. Okay, that's exactly, they're really good. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Hopefully this presentation will work now. Absolutely. You know, in fact, it's these figures that I'm going to give you today are all coming from like a very recent survey by Skillset, who are the people who are charged with training people in the media industry.
It's not coming up.
And actually, the facts and figures are that nearly half of the people in the workforce now have worked unpaid to get into the industry. Nearly half. And that is quite phenomenal. And I probably, you know, you've heard about that running and stuff like that, and how that's kind of so important. But obviously that's not a great state of affairs, because, you know, if you haven't got much money in the first place and you haven't got much to live on, that's going to be very difficult, particularly as where is the biggest play in UK? Where are the most jobs in the industry, do you think?
London, Cardiff.
In London. Cardiff, yeah. The cities, the places where it's actually most expensive to live. So if you're thinking of moving to a place like that, that's going to be really difficult. So yeah, first jobs in the industry are usually unpaid. There you go. I did an experiment when I made this presentation. I did a kind of Google Images thing. I especially did it for this day. But I grabbed the first image that I found on Google Images. I put runners, and that came up. So sorry if it is cheesy. Not quite as cheesy as Chris's example of the tape measure, but yeah, quite cheesy. So yeah. Now, how does that relate to the qualification debate that you're all grappling with now at your age? How does that, you know, thinking about producing and directing? Well, yeah, you know, actually, 73% of the media workforce are graduates. You know, they did go to university or college to get a degree. Yeah, so that's a phenomenal amount. Is that more or less than you thought? Anybody ever think about it? It's more than you thought? Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because if you're thinking about grappling with the idea about going to university, you might also think about, actually, more people who've got a degree in the industry have a non-media degree than a media degree. And it bears out a bit of what Chris was saying before about actually, well, you know, do you need a media degree to be in the media? These things to think about. I'm not promoting any one way or the other. We've heard about apprenticeships. We've heard about a lot of people skills that you need to get on in the industry. But actually, when you're thinking about doing a degree, maybe You don't need to do a media degree if you want to do a degree. And maybe, actually, in view of kind of like the experience of the world, it might be good to do something else. I don't know. Well, you know, I have an opinion, but it's interesting in itself. So 24% to 19%. So, unfortunately, you lot, as far as the media industry, you've been dubbed the expat generation. Can anyone think about why you're called the expat generation?
Because we've been brought up with technology and the internet and stuff like that.
You have, but think about the expat. What's it about?
It's instant fame.
Instant fame. It's this idea that most people, this is all about the media industry, most people who want to get into the media industry want to be producer directors, want to make their feature film. They want to be in front of the camera presenting. I'm not saying that you necessarily do, I'm just saying that's the kind of information that skill set get and other people get. And anecdotally, I know that people who come to work at Calling the Shots, a lot of them start very much with this assumption that they're going to get straight into directing or presenting or whatever. And what that means is that when people are thinking about doing qualifications, doing degrees or college courses, they're thinking more of media. They're thinking more of actually learning how to make films, like Chris was saying, short films or whatever. They want to learn those skills, rather than either going for something which is going to extend their knowledge beyond media, doing a different course or whatever, or actually doing something which is technical. Now, only 7% of the overall media workforce have a relevant technical qualification. Now, what that means is that if you wanted to get into broadcast engineering, if you were someone like that who was interested in that kind of very technical side of it, if you got into that, you pretty much have an open. There are lots of jobs in the UK for that kind of person. Now, obviously, that doesn't broadcast engineering. It's not that sexy, but actually, I know a lot of I don't broadcast engineers, but I know not necessarily sexy ones, but broadcast engineers, and it is another interesting part of the job. So, I think look at the whole world of the media and think about the kind of jobs which are. It's a bit like Chris was saying. Look at the places which aren't so popular. Think about behind the camera. Think about the technical side of it. There are like Chris was saying earlier, there are very technical skills within the media, and new media, and social media, and internet, etc., 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 which are very technical and require qualifications, vocational and academic. And that's something to look at, because remember, only 7% at the moment have actually vocational qualifications. Now, with the apprenticeships, that's something that is actually trying to address. Okay, so moving on to producer directors. I asked a friend of mine called Dave Johnson, who's a producer director now. He does just some recent series of River Cottage, Scrap Heap Challenge. He is actually a producer director every day of the week. And again, this is picking up on what Chris has had to say earlier. If you want to be a producer director rather than anything else, so we're actually thinking about what we're meant to be talking about today, you need to have to interview people, have to tell a story, to understand what kind of story they're telling. And without those core skills, it doesn't matter what new skills that producer directors are often asked for. And those skills are things like shooting, editing, using social media, etc. Because those skills are learnable on the job. You can learn all those things. But one of the things you need to kind of get right at the beginning, if you want to be a producer director, is that skill of looking at things differently, telling a story, being able to kind of carry that plan, interviewing people, and to understand what kind of story that people are telling, and also to understand what broadcasters like Channel 4 want.